Okay, gentlemen, today we have to discuss ProQual NVQ Level 6 Diploma in Occupational Health and Safety Practice. Its unit number 8 is here. What we have to discuss today. So the unit number is M-61 M/616/9539. So the name of the unit is Develop and Implement Health and Safety Emergency Response Systems and Procedures. So as we can see that its name is showing us that this unit is all about the emergency response plan and procedures, or whatever the emergency response systems you have in your organization. As usual, this unit also consists of learning outcomes and assessment criteria. So before commencing the discussion on the learning outcomes and assessment criteria, first we will have a look on how many learning outcomes are there in this unit 8 of NVQ level 6 and how many assessment criteria are there. So gentlemen, we have 4 main learning outcome in this unit. The first 3 learning outcomes are, as usual, we required assessment criteria for these learning outcomes, and other than that, the last one is fourth one is learning outcome with respect to CPD, which we are going to discuss in the last of this course. So moving forward, now we have practically what we have to complete in this unit are 3 learning outcomes, and with respect to that, in total we have to complete 21 assessment criteria. Okay, what we have to do, we have to meet 21 assessment criteria to pass this unit. In learning outcome 1, we have 8 assessment criteria. In learning outcome 2, we have 7 assessment criteria. And in learning outcome 3, we have 6 assessment criteria. So as we can see from its title, from the unit title, that it is going to be all about emergency management in this unit. So first of all, what is emergency? Because we should know that what is emergency and how it can be happen in our workplaces. So basically, any sudden or certain situation or condition in which we need rescue or evacuation, we call it emergency. So any certain or sudden condition in which we need rescue or we need help. The meaning of evacuation is that you stuck in something and you need really someone else help to get out of that. So we call it emergency. So in the workplaces, all of you know very well that if even you are doing very good in the health and safety management, but the chance of occurrence of an accident or emergency cannot be zero or at any time. So what you have to do, you have to focus on this, that even you have managed good health and safety at your workplace, but still you need an emergency response system or and procedures there in your workplace to tackle any certain or sudden condition in which we need or you need rescue or evacuation. So moving forward, these learning outcomes and assessment criteria will be all about about the emergency response systems and procedures. So the first learning outcome we have, be able to develop health and safety emergency response procedure. So first of all, before uh, tackling the emergency, we should have uh, developed health and safety emergency response procedures in place. And after that development, we should have proper implementation of that can work for us. So in this case, the first assessment criteria is 1.1, identify the potential sources of an emergency in the organization. So with respect to your workplace, you have to explain that what kinds of emergencies can be are likely in your organization. For example, uh, you can say that you are having an emergency in the form of fire, in the form of any you can say hazardous substance leakage, and anything just like that, we call it emergency. So what type of emergencies you are facing in your workplace, you have to explain in this assessment criteria. So for this purpose, what you can produce as an evidence, just a moment, just a moment. So sorry, actually candidates who are asking, they have some confusion with the link. Okay, now I was discussing about identify the potential sources of an emergency in the organization. So you have to explain that what type of emergencies or what kind of emergencies do you have in your workplace. So it can be you can provide, it can be evident by providing some evidences about the emergency response procedures. What are the emergency response procedures you have in your workplace can easily explain that how, which type of emergency you are facing or what type of emergencies you are facing in your workplace. So is it okay? Joseph, Mahmoud, Zaha.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, okay, fine. Okay, in 1.2, what it is asking for? It is asking for evaluate the organization's ability to provide the required first aid provision, adequate medical provision, firefighting provision on site and off site. So do remember that in case of emergency, the first thing what we have to do is, you can say, it is the main or basic thing what we have to do after some type of emergency happened in the workplace is first aid provision and adequate medical provision. Then we come to firefighting provision, because normally the main or big risk or hazard is fire in the workplace. So mostly we have severe emergencies due to fires. Okay, so you have to explain that that in your organization, how you are arranging or doing the arrangements for first aid provision and proper medical provision, and how your organization has developed any plan to firefighting on site and off site. So in this case, you have to explain that what type of provision you have, and in the form of evidences you can provide training matrices, competence certificates, inspection of first aid equipment, inspection of firefighting equipment, inspection of sounding alarms. All these can be used for an evidence, because these evidences can confirm here that what type of arrangements do you have in your workplace to tackle any emergency situation, mostly in the form of firefighting, and mostly to tackle with the first aid provision. Okay, now moving forward to 1.3, ensure that there are the necessary competencies in first aid and firefighting in the organization. So first of all, we can use the same evidences what we have used in 1.2. Okay, so what will be the evidences? It will be training matrices, competence certificates, inspection of first aid equipment, inspection of firefighting equipment, inspection of sounding alarms. So all these can be used as an evidence in this. But what you have to explain here, you have to actually explain that how you are making sure that the arrangements you are using having necessary competencies. So with that competencies, to you will be able to perform well in any case of in any certain situation or in any emergency. So you have to work out at your competencies. So in this regard, as I have discussed earlier, that the competency certificates, the inspection of firefighting equipment, the inspection of first aid provision, and the training matrices will be enough for this assessment criteria. Now, in 1.4, involve managers, employee representative, and employees in the production of emergency procedures. As all of us know this very well, that the communication and coordination in the organization and even in the health and safety management system is the integral part of management system. So if communication and coordination is that much necessary, in this case, what we have to do, that we have to involve managers, employee representatives, and employees in the production of emergency procedure. So you have to explain here that how you are involving managers, employee representatives, and employees in the development of emergency procedure. So actually, it is asking about that how you are considering the suggestions, the recommendations made by the managers, employee representative, and employees in the development of emergency procedure. So for this, first of all, you have to explain that what is going on in the organization with regard to this, and and also have to provide some evidences which can confirm that you are actually communicating, interacting with the managers, employees representative and employees in the development of emergency procedures. For this, evidences which can be used are meeting minutes, training sessions, emails, feedback on procedures. So all of four things can be considered as an evidence here, because normally with when we are in communication with managers, employee representative, so we have the tools: meeting minutes, training sessions, emails, feedback on procedure. Next, in 1.5, it is discussing about, yeah, Mahmoud.
And 1.4, involving the manager in the production. It can be as like by committee meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, even committee meetings and their minutes, meeting minutes, can explain that you have considered. For example, it should be relevant, Mahmoud. What I have told you earlier, that the topic should be relevant whenever you are explaining that. For example, now in this case, if you are conducting meetings with safety employee representatives and employees, you have conducted some meetings. In that meetings, with respect to this assessment criteria 1.4, you have to take that minutes of meeting, or that meeting will be good or can be used for evidence in this case, in which you are clearly discussing the emergency procedures and the emergency plan, and you are communicating to others. So discussion on emergency procedures should be included in any meeting, in any discussion. So the minutes of that meeting can be used and evidence in 1.4. Is it fine, please?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, welcome. Now, 1.5, we have develop health and safety emergency response procedures for the organization, taking into account. So it is discussing about that as all of you have emergency response procedure in your organization. So it is typically discussing about your organization. So you have to discuss about your organization in response to this assessment criteria. So what you have to explain here, about what you have to explain: the emergency response procedure, what you have in your organization, but considering these one: health and safety statutory requirements with respect to the control of an emergency, that what type of statutory requirements are there in your organization to control, to cope up with an emergency, methods of effective communication both on-site and off-site. So how you are communicating, for example, in case of any emergency, how you are informing others. It is asking on-site and off-site. It is just like that, internally and externally, how you are communicating the any emergency happened in your workplace. Like internally, to whom you have to tell, like you have to call to supervisor, manager, anyone in the organization with respect to. So externally, it may be regulatory authorities, some other authorities like police and insurance companies, etc. So you should have proper communication method to communicate the emergency internally and externally. So whatever the plan you have to explain here. Dealing with both on-site and off-site emergencies, dealing with the ongoing consequences of fatalities, injury, accidents, dangerous occurrences, fires and explosions, toxic releases, major disasters, environmental impact, rescue and security alerts. So it also explains some types of emergencies like injury, accidents, dangerous occurrences, fires and explosions, toxic release. All of these are events which we call we call these events the emergencies. So you have to consider all these emergencies. So with respect to your organization, you have to explain that how you are working with, or what are the arrangements you have to cope up with these types of emergencies. So you have to explain that, and in the evidence of this you can simply produce the emergency response procedures you have in your organization. Okay, so in addition to this, I just want to let you know that normally what happened, that we have EMS. EMS stands for Environmental Management System. So sometime what happened, mostly people call it EMS for Emergency Management System. That is not correct at all. So do remember this. So right abbreviation which we can use here is ERP, Emergency Response procedures, or even we call it ERP, Emergency Response Plan. So procedures are always included in the plan. So what the tool we have to tackle or cope up with the emergencies is ERP, Emergency Response Plan, which is a set of emergency response procedure. So we have to uh, develop that, we have to implement that. So moving forward, is it fine for everyone?
Yeah, I want to ask question in this 1.5.
Yeah.
We have while answering the question, are we going to answer based on these points? Like first one, statutory requirements. We make a point there. We make a point for the effective communication. So we have to answer like accordingly.
So you, what you have to do, Akhona Joseph, what you have to do according to these things, you have to explain that what arrangements you have in your organization. So you have to explain
for each of them.
Yeah,
I have to explain for each of them.
Yeah, each of them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now moving forward to 1.6, keep adequate records of the health and safety emergency response procedures of the organization. So in 1.6, what we have, it is asking about the keep adequate records of the health and safety emergency response procedure of the organization. So it is typically asking you that what records you have or how you are recording these emergency response procedures in your workplace. So for that purpose, what you have, you have to explain that how do you store records of the procedure, where are they stored, and how can people access these records. So you have to explain what you have to explain in this assessment criteria. How do you store records of the procedures, what are they stored, where are they stored, where you have stored your records of health and safety emergency response procedures, and how can people access these records. So these records are not even enough in a storage, so you can use them, how people can access them. So you have a clear plan to that only authorized person or the person who need this can access this. So you have a clear plan for that. So whatever the plan you have in your organization, you have to explain, like in the form of server storage locations, you have intranet system there, cloud-based story location, notice board, emergency response procedures showing review dates. So all of these can be used as an evidence. Whatever you have in your organization, you have to produce here. Is it okay? Tisha, Mahmood, Joseph, Zaha?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, 1.7 we have prepare to respond the request of the regulatory and local authorities, the emergency services, other authorities, the media and other interested parties regarding an emergency in the organization. So it is asking about that how basically what procedures do you have in place to respond to the relevant authorities, media and interested parties. So it is asking about that you have some type of emergency happen in your workplace. Practically, with the help of emergency response procedures, the firefighting arrangements, the first aid arrangements, you have managed that emergency. And whatever you have made arrangements, or you have arrangements for proper medication of injured person, that is okay. So it is asking about that. It's okay. You have arrangements for first aid, you have arrangements for firefighting, you have arrangements for hospitalization or medical support. But here it is asking that if you have to, if not, even you have to, because you have to, you are bound to respond to regulatory authority. And other than that, normally you have to respond to media and other interested parties, just to inform them or communicate them. So how you communicate them, how you can connect with them, so what type of procedures you have with you, or what type of procedures your organization have with respect to this, that when they have to respond to media, when they have to respond to regulatory authorities, when they have to respond to the stakeholders or interested parties. So you should have clear emergency response procedures or procedures there to communicate them properly. So you have to explain here. So in the form of this, you should have media response procedure in your workplace, emails to regulatory authorities procedure, any policy relating to media statements you have in your workplace, which can be used as an evidence, or simply you can provide any type of instructions, any type of procedures you have to tackle with the media, to tackle with the stakeholders, to tackle the regulatory authorities after any emergency. You have to provide here in this assessment criteria. So moving forward in 1.8, it is asking about devise a plan to implement the emergency response procedure. So, sorry, it is asking about that how you are implementing these emergency response procedures in your workplace. You have developed that, you have each and everything, you have procedures even for the regulatory authorities, stakeholders, etc. Now it is asking that how you can implement, what is your plan. So actually here in this 1.8 assessment criteria, you have to explain here what is the plan you have to implement the emergency response procedures, what you have developed. So for this one, after explaining that, in the form of evidence, you can use the inductions. Sorry, you know that in the induction training, the emergency response plan topic is must there. So inductions, you have performed induction training, you have to provide the evidence of that. Training sessions, which we call ongoing training, and the TBTs and the meeting minutes, these can confirm that you have discussed these emergency response procedure for the effective implementation in the workplace. So it was our learning outcome 1, and we have discussed its 8 assessment criteria. Now moving forward, before moving forward to learning outcome 2, if anyone has some question to ask, can ask me here. Yes, teacher. Joseph, Mahmoud, Zaha, anyone else? Do you have any question? Everything fine? Yeah, Mahmoud, please.
In the 1.8, if he is asking to plan to implement the emergency response procedure. If the procedure, you need to change it to plan?
No. Mahmoud, it is asking about that you have emergency response procedures developed with you. Okay. For example, you and your management has developed emergency response procedure. So for the implementation of that procedure, you should have a plan there to implement that procedure, emergency response procedure, in your workplace. Is it fine, Mahmoud?
So the induction and training session you are giving for all the people.
Yeah, brother. You always, for example, like if we have an emergency in the workplace, even the people who are not designated for any activity, like they are not first aiders, they are not the firefighters, even they have to run away from the workplace. Even for that purpose, they should know that what is the emergency response plan or emergency response procedure we have in the organization. For example, if they don't have any duty or special responsibility there, they only have to run away from there. So they should know that they have a clear procedure, that they have different exit routes, or even there are no exit route from where they have to exit from that workplace, or how to cope with that emergency. So if they have seen some emergency, how they can warn others, how they can inform to the concerned persons. For this purpose, you should have a clear plan that you for the effective implementation, everyone should know that what are the emergency response procedures and what are his responsibilities or duties during that emergency response procedure. For example, if someone is having a duty of firefighting, and what happened, that he knows that it is his duty, he has to stand there, other have to leave the workplace. So if you don't have a clear implementation or clear communication of emergency response procedure, so what happened, the non-competent person will come there and start to fight with the fire. So they can't do that. In that case, most of the cases, if you don't have the proper emergency response procedure, there are planned there, so people can do voluntarily anything. They know that this is fire extinguisher, they will start that, and maybe the fire can catch them. So in that case, I am just asking about that in the form of induction. For example, why it can be included in the induction. You have a new worker there in the workplace, and the same day you have an emergency of fire emergency in the workplace. if he don't know what to do in case of any emergency, he can be a victim of that emergency. So we have to communicate these emergency response procedures in induction, in training sessions, in TBT, in meeting minutes. Yes, teacher, please. Yeah, teacher, go on. You are mute. You have raised the hand.
Yes.
Yeah, bro.
Okay, Mr. Asad, this 1.8,
Hmm?
this devising a plan, I think a mock drill can cover this one, yes?
No, bro, no. Mock drill is a part of training session. A mock drill or exercise of your emergency response procedure is a part of training. Here it is asking about a complete plan to implement the emergency procedure, response procedure in your organization. So the mock exercises, the mock exercises and drills are actually a part of training sessions. So here it actually need a complete plan. For example, I will recall it for you that, for example, I have an emergency response plan in my organization. I have developed that. So for effective implementation, I have to make a plan that how I can communicate this plan from different levels of the organization. In that case, if I have a plan that from top to bottom, I have to give them give them the information. For top management, I will do some meetings. The meeting minutes will be the part of the plan. So for new workers, I will conduct the inductions and I will explain there the emergency response procedure. For the the old workers, or you can say the workers already there, I can explain these procedure, these emergency response procedure in ongoing trainings. And for to keep in mind, to just keeping the mind, or just keeping it in the mind of all the employee, when I have a TBT in the start of the work, what I will do, I will discuss the emergency response procedure. Then it will be more effective, because in case of any emergency, everyone know this, that what he got the information or what he has the information in the start of work, then according to that he can execute that, or he can perform in any case of emergency. Is it okay, teacher? Okay. Now moving forward to the learning outcome 2, we have be able to implement procedures for the control of a health and safety emergency. So it is asking about the implementation of procedures for the control of health and safety emergency. In this learning outcome, what is required from you, that how you have implemented the procedures for the control of health and safety emergency in your workplace. For this purpose, the first assessment criteria is 2.1. Confirm that sufficient facilities, materials, and equipment, including communication equipment, are available to deal with the control of an emergency in the organization. So first of all, for the implementation of procedures, because in the event of any emergency or in the situation or in the situation of emergency, only the written procedures or the procedures communicated to the workers in the form of written or in the form of just a verbal communication is not enough to cope up with any emergency. You should have sufficient facilities, material, and equipment in the workplace to to tackle these emergencies. So in 2.1, you have to explain that in case of emergencies, what are the physical arrangements do you have in your workplace, like in the form of facilities, like you have any first aid room there, you have materials like any stretchers, any other firefighting equipment you have in the workplace, and the equipment also. So including the communication equipment means that you should have a clear means of communicating any emergency. For example, alarms there. For example, like you normally know this, that you should have alarm buttons there with a specific locations, that in case of emergency you can warn all the occupiers of the workplaces to get out of that workplace. So these types of arrangements should be there in the workplace. So in this regard, you have to give the record of equipment you have, emergency equipment you have in the workplace. And you for example, you can't just write as an evidence, you can't write the names of the emergency equipment or arrangements do you have in the workplace. That can never be used for an evidence. For an evidence, you can produce an inspection report that is confirming that you have inspected these emergency response procedures arrangements. So that report can be used, our inspection report can be used here for an evidence. Okay. Okay, 2.2, provide detail in the procedures of the competencies required. Okay. With respect to your organization, with respect to your workplace, you have to explain. What you have to explain here? You have to explain here that the procedures you have developed for tackling or coping up with the emergency situation, what competencies are required, that what competencies in the main force are required to tackle any emergency situation. In this regard, you have to explain the competencies you have to use that procedures in your workplace. And for this purpose, emergency response procedures must include competencies. Training matrix can be used for evidence. So you have to explain that. You have to explain emergency response procedure, because you know that in the emergency response procedure, it is clearly marked that who will perform what activity during any emergency situation. And secondly, our training matrix can confirm that you have competencies. If people don't have competencies, you have a clear training plan for them, and it can enhance their competencies to perform well in any case of emergency situation. So 2.3, we have communicate the plan to all appropriate people in the organization. As we have discussed earlier, that the emergency response plan you have in your organization, it should be communicated properly. For this purpose, what type of mechanism you are using in your organization? So in the form of evidences, emails, training sessions, presentations are good evidences of that you are doing good with respect to communication regarding the plan of implementing the emergency response procedure in your workplace. So 2.4, establish effective liaison with the appropriate emergency services and the regulatory and local authorities. Okay, here it is asking about that you are developing, you are producing emergency response procedures. So it is actually asking that for effectiveness with liaison to go with something or have a patch up. So the right word will be that parallel to things is liaison to collectively do that. So it is asking that you are developing emergency response procedures, or you are developing our emergency response plan. So you are establishing that plan according to your workplace. So for effectiveness of that emergency response plan or emergency response procedure, you should consider the emergency service requirement of regulatory and local authorities. If you take their instructions, their requirements, and you consider that requirements in your emergency response plan, then it will become more effective, because in case of any emergency, it is serving the purpose of emergency response procedure within the organization requirements, and also it is serving the purpose of the requirements required by the regulatory and local authorities with respect to any emergency service. So you have to explain that how this can be achieved, like how your organization is achieving this phenomena. So how you are liaisoning with them, how you are getting, so emails, meeting minutes, identification of hospitals, etc. So where to go, when to go, how to go, you have to explain here with respect to your organization. Is it fine for everyone?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, now 2.5 we have respond to the requests of the regulatory and local authorities, and where necessary, the request of the media and other interested parties. So basically, it is asking about that how you are communicating to the you can say to the relevant organizations and relevant personnel. So this is personal, double NEL. It means the employees, the paid person in the organization. So it is asking that how you would you communicate with the relevant organizations and personnel. So in this regard, what are the arrangements you have, like emails to regulatory authorities, any policies relating to media statements, how you are, for example, you have seen that many times not everyone is responsible, or not everyone is allowed to interact with the media in case of any emergency. So for this purpose, an organization have clear policy that who will connect with them, who will communicate them. So whatever the arrangements you have in your organization, you have to explain here. Now 2.6 we have confirm that the investigation procedure has been carried out. How would the causes of an emergency be investigated? So for this purpose, whatever or whenever the accident investigation policy procedures you have in your organization, you have to explain that, because you do remember that in case of any emergency or accident, it is a regulatory requirement, and it is a organizational requirement too, that we have to perform or conduct an investigation after some type of emergency or accident happened in the workplace. So whatever the procedure you have in your organization, you have to explain here, and for the evidence you have to produce some investigation procedures what you have in the organization, or what are the accident investigation you have performed in the past can also confirm that you have some sound procedures there in the organization in for the investigation purpose. Now moving forward in 2.7, maintain records of the procedures for the control of a health and safety emergency in the organization. It is just same like what we have in 1.8. The evidence is you have to explain that how you are keeping the record of procedure for the control of health and safety emergency in the organization with respect to your organization, but it is the same like 1.8, that what are the means you are using for this recording. It can be online storage system, it can be servers that you have kept the information, kept the records there. So is it fine for everyone till this second learning outcome? Hey bro, just thumbs up please. If you have any question, you can ask for me. Okay. Now, moving forward to the third learning outcome, the fourth one I have told you that will be CPD, and we will be discussing after all the units. So here, it will be the last learning outcome of this unit with respect to the completion of this unit. So it is asking about understanding. So understanding of safety emergency response procedure. So what it is, the learning outcome is understand how to develop and implement health and safety emergency response systems and procedure. Here it is actually checking your understanding, that what understanding you have with respect to health and safety emergency response systems and procedures. So for this, what you have to do in this section of the unit, or you can say in this learning outcome of the unit 8, you don't have to provide any evidence, but you have to explain all these things in your words. What are your thoughts on these things? You have to explain it here. It will show that what is your understanding and how you have understood the development and implementation of health and safety emergency response systems and procedure. So starting from 3.1, we have explained the nature and role of health and safety emergency response systems and procedures within the organization. So actually it is asking about that what are the emergency response procedures you have in the organization, or simply what are emergency response procedure, why we are using, what are their purpose. So you have to explain there here. And also not even it is not enough that what are they, you have to explain why do we implement them, what role do they play in the organization. So you have to explain these 3 points here. So in 3.2, it is asking about explain the organization's emergency response procedure. So you have to explain your organization emergency response procedure, what you have in your emergency response procedure document, you have to explain here. Then 3.3, we have explain the organization's simulated emergency response procedure. So you have to explain that what simulated emergency response procedure do you have as an organization, what other simulated emergency response procedure can be used. So you have to explain here about the simulated procedure you have in your organization with respect to emergency response procedure. So after explaining this, we have 3.4, explain the principles of press releases and media management. So here you have to explain the principles, the rules, the procedure, what you have to press release and what you have for media management. How you are managing the media, how you are releasing the press releases. So you have to explain that what are their principles. For example, there is a principle that it should be from a proper representative of the organization. Secondly, it is important that no one other than the designated representative can be allowed for any communication or any interaction with the media, or he can't do, or he can't release any press release at his own. So there will be a proper representative of the organization who can perform this activity. So other than this, 3.5, explain the external factors influencing health and safety emergency response systems and procedure. Here, what you have to explain that why must clear, concise, timely, and accurate information be made by the organization. So here in 3.5, we have what type of external factors. So it will be statutory legislation, industry best practice, client demands, insurance company requirements, trade union requirements. These are the demands the organization has from outside. So external factors which can affect these are statutory legislation, industry best practice. But you don't have to explain what I have said in the here, because you mostly watch this video and then prepare your work. So do remember, you many times you can't produce all the options. So whatever the option you have in your organization, you have to explain that here. So statutory legislation, industry best practice, client demands, insurance company requirements, trade union requirements can be addressed here. So explain the health and safety statutory requirements for emergency procedure, first aid and medical service provision, fire precautions, major disasters, ionizing radiation incident, environmental impacts event. So do remember, with respect to statutory requirement, because we are discussing, or we are doing a course which is UK based, so we are taking as a you can say as an example the HASFA Act. There will be health and safety first aid regulations and other acts are there, but you have to explain that why you are making such arrangements in your workplace, by which laws and which regulations you are doing this. You have to explain that here in this assessment criteria 3.6 of Unit 8. So it is the last assessment criteria of last learning outcome what we have in Unit 8 of this NVQ level 6 diploma in occupational health and safety practice. Now it's enough from my side, or you can say it is. Yeah, Mahmood, please.
For this point 2.6, if we have a code of practices like for life and fire safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the government.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can mention this one.
Yeah, you are doing you are doing it with respect. For example, if you have some type of codes and practice, these code practices are coming from some type of law, some type of legislation or regulation. You have to explain that here. Okay, anyone else, please?
Thank you, Mr. Asad. Thank you.
Okay, brother. Thank
So
you
we'll
very
see you
much.
tomorrow again.
Yeah, inshallah tomorrow. The link will be of unit 10, but we will discuss the 9th unit. Okay.
Okay, what about 10? 10 we will take it on the next week.
Yeah, or next week, inshallah. But maybe on Friday.
Okay.